morning, good afternoon, good evening, fellow freedom lovers and people of Biafra. People of Biafra descent, I think it's only very, very apt at this point to say hello, how you doing? I hope you're all doing great. Yeah, I want to use this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, especially because of the ongoing wide protest all over the zoo called Nigeria, all over the zoo. That was once a country. I mean, when our late prolific writer wrote about Nigeria, he shook his head in dismay. He shook his head in shame, shook his head in disappointment, and he said there was a country. Because what is today Nigeria is not what was amalgamated in 1914. What is today Nigeria is a far departure from the country that the nationalists, including several Biafran nationalist figureheads, fought for in 1960. What we now have is unfortunately just a country filled with corruption, filled with clueless governments, filled with all kinds of nepotism, and filled with hatred, pathological hatred for the Biafrans. Ladies and gentlemen, fortunately, our late prolific writer, Professor Chuma Achebe, called Nigeria, there was a country. Ladies and gentlemen, because of the all wild protests here and there, all clamoring for the release, unconditional release of Nnamdi Kanu, the grand patron, leader, maximum leader of the Biafran Republic. I want to crave your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen. I want to beg you with all due respect, permit me to recast. Yes. Permit me to once again spread, or if you like, read out the very powerful last message, last script, last declaration of the Field Marshal of Biafra, late Din Chukwuemeka Ojukwu. Yes, the Field Marshal of Biafra. The very day he decided to leave, he surrendered, asked his lieutenants to surrender, and then he moved. He took a different route. He went into exile, left Nigeria after the Biafra Civil War. Ladies and gentlemen, while the whole world is looking at Biafra, while the whole world is looking at Nigeria, while the whole world is talking Biafra, while the whole world is talking about Nigeria and its failed promises, especially to the Biafran people, especially in its quest to destroy, to annihilate, completely destroy, genocide the Igbo race, the Biafrans. I just thought it's only proper that we once again remember the words of the Field Marshal of Biafra, let them, Ojukwu, which he said, Biafra lives, the struggle continues. Long live the Republic of Biafra. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the purpose of this audio, I want to once again use those same words by our very, very venerable, very fearless warrior, if you like, and Field Marshal, let them, Ojukwu. For those of you who are not born then, for those of you who have never listened to this or read those words, for those of you who have not read the history, this is a chance, a very big one, because these are momentous times for Biafra land. Ladies and gentlemen, give me your ears. Let us know and recognize and register and appreciate what the late Dame Ojukwu, Field Marshal of Biafra, said to his people on the day he finally surrendered and left Biafra land after Biafra surrendered, to the Nigerian government. Give me your ears. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Biafra, well, let me say at this point, it's a quote, not my words, a quote. So let's go on. Biafra, quote, will ever live, not as a dream, but as a crystallization of the cherished hopes of a people who see in the establishment of this territory a last hope for peace and security. Whilst I live, Biafra lives. Text of the statement by General Ojukwu on the situation in defeated Biafra, January 16th, 1970. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, they're both quotes. Let us take it again. Biafra will ever live, not as a dream, but as the crystallization of the cherished hopes of a people who see in the establishment of this territory a last hope for peace and security. Whilst I live, Biafra lives. Ladies and gentlemen, those are text of the statement by General Ojukwu on the situation in defeated Biafra, January 16, 1970. Let us go into the nitty-gritty of it. Now, let's go on. 3 days ago, I left the Republic of Biafra with certain members of my cabinet as a result of a decision taken by that cabinet in the interest of our people's survival. Since my departure, events have moved with such breathless speed that friends and foe alike have been left. They are not only bewildered, but also confused. It is therefore necessary for me to address these words to the international press in order to keep the records right and in pursuit of the object of my leaving the Republic of Biafra. It is necessary in order to understand events that have led to the drama of the past few days to look back at the origin of our conflict in this war. Biafra, once the eastern region of Nigeria, was one of the three sovereignties that banded together to form the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Three of the reasons that made the sovereignties bind themselves together were: 1, mutual protection of life and property, hence the fundamental human rights entrenched in our constitution and the arrangements made for the joint control of the police. 2, security against external and internal threats, hence the responsibility of the central government for defense. 3, the promotion of international trade and good relations with foreign countries, hence the assignment of exclusive responsibility to the central government. During the course of our first experiment in nationhood, it has become clear that the federal organization had neither the will nor the desire to maintain that unity of purpose for which the federation was founded in 1966. Yes. In 1966, it became clear that the central authority was unable and unwilling to fulfill the terms for which it was established. Right under her, the people of eastern Nigeria, now Biafrans, were subjected to such acts of barbarism, such atrocities that gave clear indication of a genocide that was to come. The people of Biafra, in full consultation and believing that the only guarantee for security lay in the resumption of their sovereignty, mandated me to proclaim their territory, the sovereign and independent Republic of Biafra, and to take up arms if need be to protect the lives and property of our people, and independence thus proclaimed. On July 6, 1967, the federal forces crossed the boundaries of Biafra and attacked our defenseless populace. Our people, in the face of such aggression, had no alternative but to defend themselves as best as they could. The war that ensued has continued from that day with unabated fury until today, when we find that because of certain limitations, we are no longer able to offer formal military resistance to the Nigerian aggressors. For 3 years, we have fought against overwhelming odds. Our conduct of the war has contrasted sharply with that of the Nigerian hordes. We were always aware of our limitations and therefore have never discontinued our efforts for peace and the negotiated settlement. We had relied on the conscience of the world to respect the rights of our people to self-determination, security. We have been frustrated by an international conspiracy against the interests of the Africans. Yet, believing in the justice of our causes and the ultimate triumph of truth over falsehood, outnumbered and outgunned, we have grimly held back the unrelenting enemy for 3 grueling years with bare hands. Nigeria began Her recent final offensive against Biafra in October 1969, after months of preparations, which included the starvation of our entire populace to such subhuman level that the movement of enemy troops through our territory became mere formality. For months, we cried to an unsympathetic world, pointing out the danger of a total blockade and siege warfare at this stage of world civilization. In answer to that cry, our people were further subjected to more deprivation by the drastic reduction of relief supplies, not only to the men folk, but to our women folk and children, to the aged and the very young, to the old and the infirm. By the end of November, the Biafran armed forces were no longer able to feed themselves. Our civil populace were neither able to feed themselves nor the army. Yet for over 30 grim days, our gallant and heroic forces maintained that their positions in the sheer hope of a miraculous respite. In the first week of January, the Nigerian forces, by a fast military move, took control of the last areas from where we had any possibility of obtaining food. In quick succession, demoralization set in, threatening national disintegration and bringing in its wake confusion and mass exodus. I gathered together at Owerri during the night of 8th January 1970. Those members of my cabinet could be contacted to review the situation. At that meeting, I presented in firm and clear terms the grim hopelessness of continued former military resistance. I informed cabinet that my primary duty in the circumstances was to seek the protection of our exhausted people and to save the leadership of our heroic republic. I therefore offered to go out of Biafra myself in search of peace. I decided personally to lead any delegation in order to give it maximum effect and to speed up matters in order to save the lives of our people and preserve the concept of Biafra. I did this knowing that whilst I live, Biafra lives. If I am no more, it will be only a matter of time for the noble concept to be swept into oblivion. I chose for the delegation the following persons: Dr. M.I. Okpara, my political advisor; Dr. N.U. Ekpa, my chief secretary; Major Jeremiah Debo, the commander of my army. From all indications, it is clear that Nigeria will not feed our people. They have said so often enough, and their past records clearly underline this fact. There is no food whatsoever in Biafra. Unless food can get into Biafran mouths in the next 72 hours, it will be too late. Nigeria's insistence to control the distribution of relief is both to ensure that Biafrans get no such relief and also to shut out outsiders who might witness and expose the enormous crimes she plans to commit against our people. Nigeria, throughout this war, has distinguished herself for a lack of control over her armed forces. It is therefore most unlikely that, flushed with intoxication of an unexpected military victory, she will be able to exercise any measure of control on her forces now on the rampage. In any case, Nigeria's aim is to destroy the elite of Biafra. The only possible way of preventing such a catastrophe is by interposing between the contesting forces some neutral force to prevent a genocide that would make 1939 to 45 Europe a mere child's play. We have always believed in the futility of this war. We have always maintained that this war will solve no problems. If this carnage must stop, Nigerian leaders and their friends must borrow a leaf from the lessons of the last World War, where it was found that a permanent settlement could only emerge from an honorable peace. Immediate efforts should therefore be directed towards early negotiations for peace without exacting full tribute of conquest. Only in this way can peace, which the whole world desires, have any chance. I therefore appeal to all governments and international organizations, countries, and churches of the world, men and women of goodwill, to both our friends and enemies, in the interest of humanity, to come forward to assist and to protect the lives and talents of Biafra, to relieve the starvation and wasteful death, now the only companion of our exhausted people. I implore the world to rise up to this desperate need, to mount all possible pressures on Nigeria to ensure that food gets to my people. In the fluid and uncertain military circumstances, the cabinet considered it advisable and reasonable that families of envoys in or going abroad should be sent out. My last hours in Biafra before my departure were spent in close conversation with Major General Philip Effiong, whom I had appointed to administer the government in my absence. And his last request to me was to take out his family and to maintain them under my protection. I agreed. Since the departure of the delegation from Biafra, we have remained faithful to our mandate. We have made contacts with friends and men of goodwill. We have spared no efforts to mobilize all forces in an effort to take food into Biafra on a gigantic scale. We have taken steps to alert the world to real fears of genocide at the hands of the Nigerians. Nigeria's continuing efforts have always been directed at domesticating the conflict in order to apply the final solution to the Biafran problem, away from the glare of an inquisitive world. I would like to conclude this statement with a solemn declaration, emphasizing again the point I have repeatedly made in this appeal to the governments of the world to save my people from extermination. The sole motive behind Nigeria's determination to draw an iron curtain over Biafra and exclude international observers, relief agencies, journalists whom they have not carefully picked themselves, is to make sure that the atrocities they will certainly carry out in Biafra are unseen and unreported in the world press. Once they have sealed off Biafra from the gaze of mankind, I hesitate to contemplate the fate of the Biafran leadership, the trained manpower, the scientists and professionals whom they would liquidate as planned before the world can interfere. Genocide, I repeat, is not an internal affair of Nigeria, and it is the clear duty of those powers who have armed and helped Nigeria to gain victory over Biafra to step in and persuade Gowon to allow in international agencies and observers to enter Biafra to feed the hungry, to heal the sick, and to save the whole people from complete annihilation. If they fail to persuade Nigeria to open her doors to these agencies, then their declarations of humanitarian aid to Nigeria become mere propaganda. I repeat, the aims of Nigeria are genocidal. The test that the contrary is the case is our willingness to admit humanitarian agencies whom Gowon has now openly declared he will exclude. As a people, we have endured as only giants endure. We have fought as heroes fight. We have dared as only gods dare. We are disillusioned by the war's insensitivity to the plight of our people. Yet, because our cause is just, we believe we have because our cause is just, we believe we have not lost the war, only that the battlefield has changed. We are convinced that Biafra will survive. Biafra was born out of the blood of innocents slaughtered in Nigeria during the pogroms of 1966. Biafra will ever live, not as a dream, but as a crystallization of the cherished hopes of a people who see in the establishment of this territory a last hope for peace and security. Biafra cannot be destroyed by a mere force of arms. May I take this opportunity to thank all those persons and organizations that have sacrificed that we might live, that we assure them that their sacrifices will never be in vain. Biafra lives. The struggle continues. Long live the Republic of Biafra. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been the final words of the late Biafran Field Marshal. Dame Chukwemeka Ojukwu before he left Biafran territory, went into exile. Cote d'Ivoire, former Ivory Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to those words once again. Listen to those words once again. And I'm sure it will touch you, it will teach you, it will motivate you, and it will give you the motivation, yes, to stand out and to support all the protests going around Nigeria, going around the world, all the protests going around the social media, where everyone, politician and civil, where everyone, leader and servant, where everyone is clamoring, protesting against the inhumanities that have continued since 1966, 67, 68, 69, 70, and which is still enduring till this 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, this war is not only for the late Field Marshal of Biafra, late Ojukwu. The war is not only for Nnamdi Kanu. The war is not only for Simon Ekpa. The war is not only for Dr. Ngozi Arabueze. The war is not only for only Biafra. It is for all freedom lovers of the world. It is for Europeans, for Americans, for Asians, for Arabs, for the United States, for Canada, for the British, and for every able-bodied Nigeria. This protest is our life. This struggle is our life. This struggle is our covenant. This struggle is our hope. This struggle is our DNA. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again quote the final words of this broadcast by such a fearless warrior, the Field Marshal of Biafra, late Dame Ojukwu. See where he said it again. He said, quote, Biafra was born out of the blood of innocents slaughtered in Nigeria during the pogroms of 1966. Biafra will ever live, not as a dream, but as the crystallization of the cherished hopes of a people who see in the establishment of this territory a last hope for peace and security. Biafra cannot be destroyed by a mere force of arms. And he ended by saying, May I take this opportunity to thank all those persons and organizations that have sacrificed that we might live, that we assure them that their sacrifice will never be in vain. Ladies and gentlemen, he ended by saying, quote, Biafra lives, the struggle continues. Long live the Republic of Biafra. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, with these words of our able, indefatigable, fearless late Field Marshal, late Dame Ojukwu, I end this audio on a sober, very sober reflection. I'm moved to tears. Every Biafran should be moved to tears when you listen to these words. Yes, this was said way back. Yes, but I assure you today, it is still very, very current. It was said way back, but it is still very, very current. It is still very relevant. It is still apt in today's world, even in the months of October 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, this statement, this message was broadcast to the Biafran people, to the world press on January 16th, 1970 by General Ojukwu on the situation in defeated Biafra. January 16th, 1970. And I assure you, it is still current today. It is still relevant today. It is still happening today. It is still up today. It is constant, continuous, and ever recurring. Long live the Republic Biafra. Ladies and gentlemen, rally around as we go around to the protest. Tell this message. Spread this message to those you meet who don't know. They have abolished history in schools, hoping people will not know about this. But we have brought it out. We have exposed them. We have beaten them to their game. Ignorance is not an excuse. Rise up, ladies and gentlemen. Raise up. This is our chance. This is the best time for Biafrans to remember who they are, what they stand for, and why they fought the war. Our people have suffered enough. Enough is enough. We cannot continue to be treated like a defeated people. since 1966, 67, 68, 69, 70. Events of 1966, 68, 69, 70. Ladies and gentlemen, this is time to tell ourselves the truth. Peace to all freedom lovers of the world. Peace to every Biafran. Long live the Republic of Biafra. God bless you all.